So the angel comes to Mary and tells her what God's plan is. And what we have in the Bible says that he told her about becoming pregnant and that the child would grow up to change everything, but I don't believe that's the end of the story, or at least I don't believe that's the end of what Mary knew about what would happen. I think Mary could see down the years. She could imagine what this child's end would be. And I think she said yes, but then I think she had him in her arms after he was born, and she realized what it was going to be like. And then they went to the temple that time when he was 12, and he ran away, and they found him there surrounded by all the elders and the teachers, and she saw how they were looking at him, and she could see where this was headed. And she went with him to the Jordan that day, and she saw him go under the water and come out, and the heavens open up above her, and she could see the looks on the faces of the scribes and the Pharisees and the people around her, and she could imagine where this was going. And so I imagine her all throughout his short life, almost from the moment when he was born. I imagine her kneeling there by the manger, imploring God to change the plan. Oh God, please don't let it end that way. I imagine her saying, please don't take him from me. Please don't do what you said you were going to do. And I picture God there in the throne room, surrounded by functionaries. I picture them all in ties and blazers. And I picture Gabriel whispering in God's ear. I picture Mary's words floating up to heaven. And I picture Gabriel whispering in God's ears. She was warned. She was given an explanation. I picture her on her knees, picturing her great dead son in her arms, and picturing that as the end of everything. And I picture her howling with pain and despair. We think that Jesus made the parables up, cut them out of whole cloth, that they're all imaginary people, that he invented to tell a story, to make a point. And maybe that's true. But this one, the one we heard today about the widow banging on the door of the judge day after day after day, I don't think he made that one up. I think that one was taken from real life. I think this is the story that he made up after hearing his mother praying in the next room all throughout his childhood. I think it's the one that he made up when he heard her calling out to heaven on her knees, banging on the doors of heaven and demanding a different ending. Don't let it end like this, O God. Don't take him away from us like this. He doesn't have to die, O God. Do something. The widow in the story isn't made up. It is his mother that he spent a lifetime listening to, demanding justice for herself and for her son. Anyone who's a woman alive in the world today hears echoes of her own experience in this story, I would imagine. And if not in the story, then the story of what went down Tuesday night in the Senate chamber, right? You know what was happening. Senator Sessions was undergoing hearings to become the Attorney General. Many years ago, he had stood for the bench and gotten shot down because of racist things he had done and said in his past. And part of what shot him down that first time around was a letter written by Coretta Scott King against the nomination, and Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts thought that that letter, if it mattered then, would matter this time, and so stood up to read it out on the Senate floor in opposition of his nomination. And Mitch McConnell, the leader of the Senate, invoked an ancient rule 150 years old or so, that was originally written to protect pro-slavery senators who were being impugned by their colleagues in the Senate, invoked a rule that said that she was not allowed to speak out against, to impugn, to speak against the character of other senators, and so silenced her. He did it legally and according to the rules. They always do it legally and according to the rules. They always do it without breaking the law. This silencing, this disempowering, this saying, sit down and shut up. It's always legal. You have to choose to break the rules if you want to let them be heard. You have to choose to not care about unjust laws, or at least not care about following unjust laws. If you're going to open the door, if you're going to let them stand, if you're going to hand them the mic, if you are a boy who thinks you ought to shut up for once and let somebody else speak. All his life, he heard her on her knees banging on the doors of heaven. And every time her fist banged against that door, it slammed against it, and it was Ruby Bridges' fist on the door of the schoolhouse. She banged on the door of heaven, and it was Rosa Parks hitting the door of the bus. She banged on the door of heaven, and it was Elizabeth Cady Stanton outside the polling place. She banged on the door, and it was Harriet Tubman trying to knock the doors off the system. He heard that all throughout his life, and so he gave us this story to remind us of what is required. Required by the woman who wants to make the change. Required, too, by the judge who wants to do the right thing. All his whole life, he heard his mother do this, and so he told us this story, and then the thing that she feared happened anyway. And there he was, there on the cross, and there she was on her knees in front of him. And there was God looking down, and I picture the angels in the throne room, those functionaries swirling around in their ties and blazers, saying she was warned. She was given an explanation. What did she think was going to happen? And I picture her howls of grief echoing through the world and down through the ages and filling the throne room of heaven. And I picture God sighing and standing up and bending down. And I picture the angels, their wings starting to flutter in fury and amazement. She was warned. She was given an explanation. Oh God, what are you doing? And I picture God saying, yes, she was warned. She was given an explanation. And then I picture God reaching down to the rock in front of the tomb and starting to roll it away. And you know what God said then. Nevertheless, she persisted. Say amen.